So today, we're going to talk about one of the better films to feature a murderous Santa Claus. Which sounds like a backhanded compliment, like how many of those could there really even be? But you'd honestly be surprised how often Santa got a little stabby on celluloid. I mean, it's a well-known fact that suit wasn't always red. Christmas Evil is a 1980 film written and directed by Lewis Jackson. It was originally titled You Better Watch Out, and is also known as Terror in Toyland. I don't know why Christmas Evil was the one name that eventually got settled on. To be honest, it's probably the worst of the three possible they could have chosen, because it's not all that memorable, and arguably it's the least accurate, but whatever. Weirdly, there's kind of a pattern so far with these Christmas movies to all have multiple names. I didn't mention it last video, but Black Christmas was also called Silent Night, Evil Night in America during its first theatrical push, only to revert to Black Christmas with every subsequent release. But I digress. Christmas Evil, from its poster and premise, sounds like it's going to be some schlocky run-of-the-mill Santa slasher, which again, is more common than you think. It's certainly what I figured I'd be getting into when I watched it recently. Its descriptors often sum it up as a dude gets dressed up as Santa Claus and goes on a killing spree. And with that 1980 date right up there next to its title on streaming services, I had a confident idea of what I was getting into. You see 80s slasher, not heard much people talk about it kind of got buried in the sea of gory teen killers from that era. You think, okay, so this is going to be Silent Night, Deadly Night's less well-known cousin. And let me tell you, dear viewers, this film does indeed feature a man dressed as Santa Claus, and that man does indeed slay. In a murdery way, just to be clear. Not in like a drag queen slay kind of way. That just felt natural with my delivery just now. Never mind, not the point. The point is, though, that while this film did in fact deliver ultimately on the promise of tinsel-decorated acts of violence, and I certainly got what I expected there, it's also very much not just that. This movie isn't really schlocky. Not like the way you'd expect it to be. It ain't no wham bam I'll stab ya mam. It's kind of a lot more than that. This film doesn't feel like another hokey 80s gore-fest. It's kind of more of like a psychological character study. I'm gonna say something that kind of sounds ridiculous here. Especially for an 80s slasher film most people have forgotten about a murderous Santa Claus called Christmas Evil. But like, trust me, this is legit. This is honestly true. This film is kind of like The Joker. Seriously, it's really quite similar. Okay, bear with me. So Christmas Evil starts on a happy little family note of two kids excited for Christmas Day. It's 1947 and brothers Harry and Phil are waiting with their mother for Santa Claus to come down the chimney, and they even get a glimpse of the big lad before their mum puts them to bed. Here, Harry excitedly chatters away to a grumpy Phil, thrilled and in disbelief that they got to see the real Santa. Phil, however, is unimpressed and belittles Harry, pointing out that wasn't Santa, it was just their dad in a suit, and telling him that Santa's not real. Harry ain't buying it, and keen to prove his brother wrong, he goes downstairs for another look, only to see his mum and the previously mentioned Mr. Claus getting it on. Well, not really getting it on, he just kind of gropes a leg a good while, but we know where this is going. And this is his Joker moment. It's not a very strong one, I'll give you. That's actually one of my biggest criticisms with the film. This turn of events is genuinely the thing that's deemed as the root cause for this kid to grow up and snap into a serial killer, and ultimately it boils down to his mum was going to get dicked. And look, no one wants to know about the mum getting dick. Sure, fair enough. But if you did accidentally stumble upon a little flirty leg grope, you or I might think, ah! Oh god, no, oh! But you probably wouldn't, I don't know, smash a snow globe, use the glass to cut your own hand, become completely fixated on the idea of Christmas to the point where it makes so much of your hobby's interest and personality that you find the act of making friends with common interests near impossible, isolate yourself into becoming a complete social outcast until your mental health deteriorates to such a level that the only way you can even feel anything anymore is to dress up as Santa and alternate between committing acts of extreme violence and extreme kindness in an effort to fill a weird void in your heart that's always been there since the moment you had to hear that Santa wasn't real and you realised that the magic you once believed in was nothing more than an illusion created by a horny old man? Yeah, that. You probably wouldn't do that, right? Well, that's what our boy Harry does. Like I say, weird premise for the tragic trauma backstory, but if you can get on with this central conceit, the rest of the film that's presented is genuinely fascinating. You see, it might just be a story about a man who snaps and kills as Santa. But unlike a lot of slashers around the area, here it's not about the slash, it's about the snap. You see, this film has a secret weapon, and that's Harry. Because this dude isn't just some avatar stand-in to act as the film's big bogeyman that they just give some sharp object to and let loose. Harry is tragic. Like, really sympathetically tragic. Don't get me wrong, by the end of this film's runtime, he'll have killed quite a few people. My sympathies are limited. He's not exactly a cool dude, but he is really strongly developed, thanks to a strong, slow-burning downfall and a genuinely tremendous performance by actor Brandon Maggart. When we come back to Harry in adulthood, he lives alone in what would be a pretty basic apartment, were it not for all the Christmas decorations and memorabilia scattered around. Working at a toy factory, a role he really genuinely cares a lot about, he's consistently belittled and taken advantage of by the other employees who make jokes at his expense for giving a shit about the quality of the toys they are making. Something that's very important to him as it ties into his love of Christmas, and he wants every kid to have something special on the day. And others will manipulate him into covering shifts for them, phrasing it like they're doing him a favour and that they need the time off to be with family around Christmas, playing on Harry's emotional connections to the season, only to be found at the bar later bragging about how they got that schmuck Harry to cover for him. On top of all this, his relationship with his brother seems turbulent. While they still keep in touch, especially around the Christmas, his brother seems to see him as a weird and uncomfortable obligation. Someone he feels he has a level of responsibility for, but a responsibility he clearly deeply resents. A resentment his wife notes often surfaces even with some degree of bullying. Harry is friendless, loveless, and joyless. Harry is not having a good life. And the one thing that gives him any spark of joy in this miserable existence seems to be this absolute and total fixation and adoration of the simple idea of Christmas. But even that is being challenged and taken away from him. At Harry's toy factory, he's been promoted to manager, a position he does not enjoy as much as making the toys, but at least would hopefully come with a greater ability to make sure good toys are made and more kids get them. However, that turns out to not be the case at all, as the employees he's in charge of pay no attention to his requests and see him as having no authority. And his peers on the management level make it very clear that there's absolutely no interest in putting the children and toys first here. It's all about saving the company money and making them look good while doing it. And as we watch Harry go through all these day-to-day struggles, as we see him be spoken down to, laughed at, manipulated, the cracks begin to slip in. He'll sing Christmas songs to himself that slowly get more and more aggressive or sad. He'll spy on neighbourhood children to determine if they make a naughty or nice list. He'll break things in his home, and it's all sold brilliantly by Brandon Maggart's genuinely phenomenal performance. This is what I mean when I say it's like the Joker. And you know, it's also kind of like Taxi Driver, because that's kind of what the Joker is really. But I'm using the Joker here specifically because it has a similar sort of depiction of declining mental health. And finding this kind of joyful, if terrifying, I don't want to use the phrase enlightenment because that feels like the wrong word, but an unhealthy and violent escape from the burdens of their life through the medium of taking on this costume persona. For Mr. Arthur Fleck of Joker fame, that was the clown persona of the Joker. Here, it's the same thing for Harry. It's just that his costume of choice is Santa Claus. And when Harry finally transforms into his Santa, in a scene where all of the awful the world has piled on him finally gets too much, and for some reason his only escape is to put on a fake white beard, there is such a sadness in his eyes. It's honestly kind of chilling. Like, I must stress, when I'm praising Maggart's performance in this video, I'm not just saying it's good for a silly Christmas horror movie or good for an 80s slasher. It is a really phenomenal performance by any metric. There's an instance where he pulls at the beard he's just glued to his face as he grits his teeth into a facsimile of a smile and his eyes glass over with tears, and there's so much going on in that moment. It's almost like you feel a sense of regret or desperation. Like this is his one last chance to pull it all back before he finally snaps and does who knows what. But you're witnessing him lose that fight for his sanity in real time. It's honestly just brilliant. Like, it really is. And what's interesting is even when he does finally go over the edge, it's not in a way where it's like, okay, we got the tragic backstory stuff out the way, now let's go all happy slashy. One of his first acts as Santa is to steal a load of toys from the factory and deliver them to sick children at the hospital, in a scene that is, bizarrely, after everything you've just watched, which up to this point was just a desperately sad man trying and failing to keep it together, comes across as really quite heartwarming. Taken out of context, this feels like something that belongs in like a classic family Christmas film. The kind that makes you feel all fuzzy inside, only to bring you crashing back down in the next scene when he kills several people with a hatchet who make fun of him in front of a terrified onlooking crowd. It is a wild and bizarre but kind of genuinely brilliant film. It doesn't always work, it has some real odd pacing issues here and there, and again, the central background for Harry's whole trauma, considering the stuff he does end up doing, takes a great deal of suspension of disbelief. But when it's good, it is great. There's a genuine Christmas spirit in this film too. Obviously, the Christmas backdrop almost works to make everything that little bit more uncomfortable and sad because it creates that juxtaposition of pairing visuals of something seen as so traditionally joyful with a narrative that's so tragic. But the film does well to create this balancing act where not everything is so completely enveloped in this discomfort. When the film wants to be wholesome and heartfelt, it truly manages to be that, even when those sequences are sandwiched between murders. Bringing in the snowfall just as the doctors come out to collect the toys for the kids in that one scene, man, it's really corny, but holy shit does it work so well. And it's great because with the way the film plays out, you're always kind of expecting the worst possible outcome for whatever comes next. And then sometimes that outcome just doesn't happen. And you're like, oh, that went really quite nicely. But it also keeps you on edge because it could take a turn at any moment. So you don't know if you can trust the happy bits to stay happy, but when they do, it becomes this lovely surprise. It is really impressive stuff, and it's wild to me that this film in particular isn't more well known. Don't get me wrong, it has its vocal cult following, and I'm certainly glad of that. One of its biggest advocates is director John Waters, who has been known to call it the greatest Christmas film of all time. And like, I get it. I'm not saying I personally agree with that statement, but I totally see why for some people it definitely could be. There is an argument to be made here. It's very Christmassy. And I don't just mean that in the sense of like, yeah, it's set in the window and there's a shitload of tinsel. I don't mean Christmassy in the sense of its backdrop or setting. I don't even mean it in terms of its main character's psychological fixation. I mean the sentiment and its themes are properly Christmassy. One of the reasons Harry is such a sympathetic character, I'd argue a lot more than Arthur in The Joker actually, is while he commits evil acts, he doesn't feel at any point to be evil himself. Not by the kind of strange internal logic of the film. It's one of the reasons I hate the title so much. Like a much more accurate title than Christmas Evil would be Christmas, oh you shouldn't do that, I get why you're doing it a little I guess, but it's still really bad and you shouldn't. Though I do suppose that is a mouthful though. But my point is, all of his kills feel responsive to what feels like slights against what Christmas should truly represent. Like take the scene where Harry meets with some other manager types at a Christmas party. They congratulate each other and brag about how they had this brilliant idea to give the company some great PR by giving toys to all these sick kids. But when Harry quizzes them to make sure that every sick kid will get a toy at the hospital they're planning to donate to, they're like, I don't know. It sounds good though, right? And then it turns out this toy drive for the sick isn't even coming out of the company's pocket, but rather funded by donations from the employees. And this sets Harry ablaze. He calls them out to their faces, he storms out, and it's one of the factors that eventually leads to him snapping, and the whole time throughout that scene you're like, yeah, fuck these guys! Tell them, Harry! That's not what Christmas should be about. That's what it is about, quite often, but it's not what it should be about. And you kind of sat there thinking, you know what? Maybe Santa should kill these guys. I'm kind of on board with that. And this film, through its slashing, kind of feels like it's just taking a knife to the head of this kind of gross, capitalistic commercialization of this holiday we're told so much should be about family and giving. And I vibe with that, you know? A metaphorical attack on this ideology through the medium of a physical attack on characters who represent it, that's dope. It resonates conceptually on a surprisingly profound level. And the film looks exceptional too. It is seriously well directed and regularly smashes the ceiling you'd expect it to have with its budget. Like, obviously we've already focused on some of the Harry breakdown stuff, which is framed and performed with brilliant attention to details from both those behind the camera and in front of it. But also just like, look at this shot! This is beautiful! This is a stunning composition. This does not look like a sub $1 million movie. And yet, with all this going for it, I hardly ever hear it even spoke about. I mean, it's crazy, right? It didn't even seem to get so much as controversy views. Silent Night Deadly Night came out 4 years later, and it was so controversial because of it being a theatrical release where the killer was dressed as Santa that it got pulled from cinemas due to complaints and protests, and that controversy may have got the film pulled from theaters in little over a week, but not before it pocketed a cool 2.5 mil and even had an opening weekend that outgrossed Nightmare on Elm Street. Noteworthy that Elm Street was on less screens at this point, but still, that film now has 4 sequels, a remake, and another entry on the way, and everyone with any knowledge of slasher films knows all about Silent Night Deadly Night. But Christmas Evil is so much better! Like, it is such a better film! I'm not even knocking Silent Night Deadly Night here. It's slutty, it's cool, it's whatever. But Christmas Evil is like, good. And it couldn't even get so much as an angry protest. Presumably because so few people even knew about this movie to even get angry about it to begin with. It did the Killer Santa cinema release thing 4 years ahead of Billy's December to Dismember, and it just went completely unnoticed. I mean, at least it's getting a little more notice now, but still not as much as it deserves, I'd say. It definitely should be remembered a lot more than Silent Night Deadly Night. I know I keep mentioning that movie, but I'm sorry, it's just not as good. But yeah, it's good that Christmas Evil has its fans, and I hope it continues to find more, because it's not for everybody. It really won't be. I thoroughly recommend it, but I kinda know that some of you are going to have listened to this video and gotten super pumped up for this and think, wow, that sounds awesome. And then you're gonna check it out and it's not gonna necessarily do it for you. I think some of you might watch this and be like, yeah, I kinda see what the skeleton was talking about, but... and it's just not gonna land for you. Like I say, it shows its age in some places. That pacing it's kinda rough. And man, I am not kidding about that trauma backstory that acts as a catalyst for the whole film. That is genuinely all there is to it. But there'll be some of you out there who haven't seen this film, and perhaps some of you are watching this video right now, and you're going to watch this film. And when it ends, you're going to have a new favourite Christmas movie. And if I can be the catalyst for anyone in making that discovery happen, well, then hasn't this video been worth doing? And that's A Christmas Evil. Great film, terrible title. Don't forget, I'll be back next week with another creepy Christmas treat. So until then, remember to subscribe to my Only Dance by hitting that red subscribe button below. Make sure to hit the bell to get future notifications. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And if you really loved it, please consider becoming a patron at the link in the description for some cool extras, some early videos, and a chance to catch your name in the credits of videos like these ones coming up right now.